Welcome to When Football Began Again, the podcast that takes a nostalgic look at the Premier League era. Hello and welcome to episode 13 of When Football Began Again, the Michael Ballack episode, if you will. Today's show is an in-depth chat with a former Premier League star. Ashley Ward is joining me on the show. We chat all about his rather enjoyable looking life after football, living in Dubai. We talk about his early career, dealing with injuries, breaking through at Crewe, playing for 5 different Premiership clubs, and when he kind of knew it was time to hang his boots up. And now, life after football, which is going pretty well, but he does have a rather famous multi-Premier League winning son-in-law. We chat all about that and much more. That's coming up very shortly. Just a quick hello and welcome to anybody joining the show after last week's episode, my Deserted Island Matches episode with Welsh comedian Simon Emmanuel and lots of Swansea City fans. So lovely reaction to that. And thank you very much for the reviews that have followed since that as well. Really appreciate that. If you are listening to this show, one of the ways you can support it is by leaving a review. Ideally a 5-star review, but you know, you're your own person. You decide. I would really appreciate it. It really helps me get up the rankings and find new listeners. So please do that if you get a chance to do that. That probably won't be the last time I ask that favour of you. Sorry about that. I'll also be revealing who the Premier League's greatest Australian is. Listen out for that at the end of the show. It was a tight vote, let me tell you. One of the closest we've had so far. All that coming up at the end of the show. But let's crack on. A wonderful chat with Ashley Ward for you, live from his home in Dubai. He just got home from rush hour in Dubai. Most of his family were just on their way to bed. He still made time for the interview. A really lovely man, and I think it really comes across in this chat as well. He is just charming company and a really, really great goal scorer in the Premier League and First Division during the 90s and into the noughties. So we chat all things football and quite a bit beyond with Ashley Ward. Enjoy. Joining me today to discuss their Premier League and football career in general is former Norwich, Derby, Barnsley, Blackburn and Bradford forward Ashley Ward. Ashley, thank you so much for joining me today. You're in Dubai. I know it's quite late there as well, so a special thank you. You look like life's treating you well. How are you? How's life after football?
Yeah, I mean, life is treating me well, really. I can't complain. You know, we moved out to Dubai about 14 months ago. The family, I've got 2 elder daughters who live at home, but my 2 younger ones are with us over here, and so far we've loved every minute of it. It's been great. Well,
we're going to find out a little bit more about that later. Let's jump back to your playing career first. You started out playing for Manchester United and Manchester City at junior and academy level before loan spells at Wrexham, Leicester and Blackpool. You were closing in on your 22nd birthday when a move to Crewe that would really kickstart your career happened. We'll come to that in a minute, but what was that spell of your career like when you're trying to get a chance, you're moving around as a young player, I guess waiting for that big break? How is that for a young player?
Yeah, it's difficult. So, I mean, I've had quite a few injuries throughout my career, but I had quite a few at the beginning there. And when I think I got my debut at Man City at 17, 18, played a couple of games as a sub, and everything was going great. I was training with the first team, and I broke my leg in training. In a tackle with the coach, actually, Tony Buck, believe it or not. So he was our youth coach, but it was a lot tougher in those days. I can't imagine an academy player at one of the top clubs now getting injured by the academy coach. But yeah, we're 50-50 between myself and Skip, the coach, and I had a long spell out. And I really struggled with that injury because I was going from place to place, but I wasn't really fit. I couldn't strike through the ball properly, and it was creating me a lot of problems. So I had a long spell at Wrexham where I got off to a good start there, scored a couple of goals on my debut. And then when the move came to Leicester, I was looking forward to it, but it was difficult to establish myself. Like I say, I wasn't really fully fit, and it's quite a difficult spell, really. Trying to cope with an injury when you're established and you've made your name is one thing. People give you a bit more time, and but as a youngster, it's kind of, I probably tried to play through it too much, and it was only when I had an operation whilst I was at Leicester to strip part of the ankle joint. All of a sudden things got better, and shortly after that I moved to Crewe and started to play first team football, that's what you need, isn't it? As a youngster, you need to be playing that first team football to know to know where your level is.
You joined Crewe in the 4th tier. You had a few serious injuries there, I know, as well. You bagged 25 goals and 61 appearances still over 2.5 seasons there. You're on the wrong end of a playoff final result in your first season there, but score the goal that seals automatic promotion in 93-94. And then you make an immediate impact at the beginning of 94-95 as well in the 3rd tier. Happier memories, presumably, because you found your footing, you've established yourself, you're a goal scorer and you're getting a real reputation. What was that period like at Crewe?
Yeah, I mean, it was brilliant. We had a lot of good players there. Dario was a great coach, and I was playing first team football. You know, it didn't start too great. I think about the 2nd or 3rd game, I'd never really been sent off or anything, but I got sent off. So yeah, Dario wasn't the sort of guy to take that well, to be honest. You know, I can still remember the after match team talk from him, which was centered around how many idiots we had on the pitch trying to get himself sent off. But I was the biggest one of all who managed to do it. So yeah, but then I got a bit of momentum, got in the team. You know, Dario was a great coach for individuals because it was very lucky really, because I was playing first team football and getting first team experience. But he was the kind of coach who would take a player to one side and try and improve that individual player, which I don't think 99.9% of first team managers have that luxury really, or not that they don't bother, but the focus is probably quite rightly got to be on a, you know, it's a points, you know, it's a results game, and if they don't win, they're out. So, but he was so secure there, you know, he'd been part of the furniture by the time I got there, that, you know, he would take players and work on them individually and make you a better player. And I think, you know, a lot of the lads who came through during that period will vouch for that.
Well, yeah, I mean, that team you were part of, I mean, it is famous for having a number of young players who've gone to play at the top level. So yourself, Neil Lennon, Robbie Savage, Danny Murphy. I mean, even as a group of really quite young players at that time, was it obvious that that was a dressing room that was brimful of talent?
Do you know what? It's funny, I don't know, because looking back, obviously it is, you know, because you see those players go on, but at the time you don't know whether, you know, it's not like we were going out every week and beating everybody 10-0 and then you go, oh, we're obviously miles better than everyone else, but we got promotion. I remember Dario at the start of the season saying, oh, it's going to be very difficult this year in the 3rd division. It's the level so much higher and so much more difficult. Everyone will be quicker, faster, stronger. And honestly, I don't think there was any difference at all. We started off the season, we were playing as a team. Whether we'd matured as a team and, you know, the young lads were getting a bit older and more experienced, but I almost feel like we as a team and myself, we found it easier in the old 3rd tier than the bottom tier, to be honest. But, you know, looking back now, it's obvious that, you know, Murph and Neil Lennon, and, you know, we had a great crop there, and that's probably why we got the promotions.
Crewe do get promoted again into the 2nd tier. You won't be a part of that though. You have a £500,000 move to the Premiership with Norwich. Even by 1994 standards, £500,000 for a goal scorer, the number of goals you scored is impressive as a fee. How did that move come about? Was it an easy decision for you to make when a Premiership team come knocking?
You know, obviously starting off at City, and it's always everybody's ambition to get back in the Premier League, and I think part of the move from Leicester to Crewe was to get first team football. I mean, I guess that's everybody's plan who goes there, and it doesn't always, you know, go right for everybody. But for me, the plan was definitely step down, get some experience, get some great coaching, and hopefully prove myself as capable of playing at a higher level. So that was always the plan. And when it came, I started to do well, and there was interest from, you know, in the newspapers and various different, you know, people coming and watching, and you hear all these stories. And Norwich sort of came out of the blue from, you know, it's probably the last club I was thinking of, to be honest. There was different stories about different clubs, but Norwich was probably one I'd not heard anything about. You know, I think I just moved into a new house with my wife, then my girlfriend. We'd sort of half renovated this house ourselves and put a load of time and effort into it. And it was Christmas time. I was stood on a ladder, just finished the house, stood on a ladder, putting the fairy on top of the Christmas tree when the phone rang and said, do you want to go to Norwich? So straight in the car down to Norwich. I don't think we stayed another night in the house. Wow. So a bit of a shock.
Yeah, no, and Crewe to Norwich not particularly commutable. I mean, who were the one or two of the other sides that were looking at you? Do you remember who was it potentially rumoured?
Yeah, in the day it was like Middlesbrough. Gosh, who were the others? Coventry, all different Premier League sides at the time. You know, there was sort of a different one every week, if you like, mentioned, but except Norwich, you know. Yeah, and then obviously Norwich, the people who came up with the money.
And I know the game's changed quite a bit since then with the agents now responsible for everything. Was this all done through agents as well to kind of make this initial contact?
Gosh, it's a long time ago now, but I don't think in those days I even had an agent, to be honest. I didn't. No, I didn't have an agent. No, I went down, just me and did I go down with my dad? I might have gone down with my dad, I think. Went down, and Robert Chase, the old chairman there, I think he died last week or something, I noticed in the paper. He was a real character, and he sat us down, gave us a tour of the ground, and told us how well they look after everybody. And it was a lovely club, Norwich. It was a great club, and I couldn't wait to sign, to be honest.
Well, life at Norwich does get off to a dream start for you. You score 2 goals on your debut at home to Chelsea. Then you score the winner at Selhurst Park to leave you on the edges of the European places going into Christmas. I went back and watched the Chelsea highlights on YouTube. Your goals are both just brilliant, instinctive poachers finishes, and I think that's also a little bit of a hallmark of your game as well. You had such an instinct for goal scoring. What can you remember about that game, your debut, and how much of a relief for you is it as a striker just to get off the mark? You join a new club, you've come to this higher level, or back at this higher level, I should say, and you're scoring again. That must be a huge weight off your shoulders?
Yeah, I mean, it's the ideal start, isn't it, for a striker? I think it was midweek when I signed, maybe Wednesday or something. I trained on the Thursday. I thought at best I'm going to be on the bench or something, And I remember John Dean saying, "Oh, you're going to play that, on Thursday or Friday. Oh, you'll be playing on Saturday." I was like, "Really?" I was kind of like, in my own head, I thought I'm going to get a bit of time to get used to it. I'm obviously, I'm staying in a hotel, kind of 6s and 7s, and there wasn't even, I couldn't even think straight really. At 1 minute, I'm putting the fairy on the tree and saddle with the Oldham, and next thing you know, I'm in a hotel in Norwich and I'm playing against Chelsea on Saturday. It was all a bit quick, and then I went out and managed to get off to start like that, score a couple of goals and beat. They were a decent Chelsea side. I think they were sort of 4th or 5th in the table at the time or something. So it was a good test for the first game, but and a good result for us, and great to get off the mark. Settles you in with the fans straight away, doesn't it?
The goals on your debut are something special with the fans. You score 8 goals in 25 appearances in your debut Premiership season. A downturn in Norwich's form after Christmas sees you win just the 1 game in the 1995 half of that season, though. It is against your rivals Ipswich, I should add, and you're on the score sheet in that game. That must have been difficult, though, I guess, that second half of the season, and it kind of taking a little bit of a downturn. I mean, what was that experience like? And what do you reflect on that thing of people talk about momentum in football? Is it it's just difficult to get out of that rut when results start going the wrong way?
It was. I mean, it was like, I didn't know much about it. Obviously, didn't know much about the squad at the time, but all I knew is that obviously just before the period when I went, they'd done well in Europe, and and I'd seen it from afar, and just assumed we had a squad full of great players, but the squad probably wasn't that deep. From going there and winning a few games, and we went there and being quite high up in the table, and we picked up a few injuries. We got injuries to Brian Gunn in net, who was like a stalwart of the team and Mr. Norwich, So, and when the game started coming thick and fast, we were just 2 or 3 players short, in terms of the squad. And once we started losing games, it's just, the Premier League's the worst in the world for that, because every game, you look at the fixture list and every game's unwinnable, when things are going against you. It was a shock, actually, how quick things turned around, from being sort of great at Christmas and everything being, rosy, looking forward to things, to, losing a few games and then all of a sudden thinking, we can't get out of this.
And that was the season. Obviously, four teams went down as well that season, so it made it an even bigger trapdoor to try and avoid. You grab another 13 goals in all competitions the following season for Norwich. I think this also, by the way, means you've scored in all 4 of the top divisions before your 25th birthday, which I can't imagine there's too many players who managed that in an entire career. Did you not know that?
No, I didn't even know. Yeah, well, actually, I must have known that I've done it in my career without even thinking about it, but. Before I was 25. Wow, that's right. Yeah. I was a journeyman before I was even 25.
Well, very impressive goal scoring feat. Then comes a chance to join promotion chasing Derby, who signed you in March 1996 for £1 million. A return to the Premier League with them follows soon after. against the backdrop of the Premiership, there's something distinctly traditional, I think, about that derby. They're still at Baseball Ground under Jim Smith. What it seemed like a very happy spell in your career again. I know you're very, very popular with the Derby fans as well. What was it like that spell at Derby?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great spell actually. Talking about getting off to a flying start with, when I signed for Norwich, it's kind of a bit the opposite of Derby. I left Norwich midweek again, sort of Wednesday, Thursday. And the first game back was on the Saturday at Carrow Road against Norwich. Got through 1-on-1 with the keeper, missed a great chance, and made it a more difficult start than it needed to be, really. Because had I scored that, it would have settled the nerves a lot quicker than they did. So, yeah, the back end of that season wasn't that easy. It was very tight to go up, and I didn't play as big a part in that as I would like to have done, really. But when we got into the Premier League, it was great times in general, because we were moving to the new stadium as well. So the old Baseball Ground for that first year in the Premiership was priceless, really, and I think a big factor in Derby staying up. So many of the pitch was awful. The crowd were right on top of the pitch, but the pitch itself was awful. I think I can remember Chelsea coming there actually, and we had the predicted team that they were going to play, and they walked out on the pitch and they're all scratching their heads and shaking their heads, and next thing you know, the team came out and Zola wasn't playing and Vialli I don't think was, but they left the ball players out, and I think that definitely went in Derby's favour. And then a couple of years after, we moved to the state-of-the-art Pride Park at the time, and I was quite lucky, really. I scored the last Derby goal at the Baseball Ground, and the first Derby goal at the new ground, although that got cancelled out when the floodlights went out.
Of course.
Yeah, so it actually wasn't the first goal in the new ground, because the game got abandoned when we were winning 1-0 against Wimbledon. But yeah, it's a great time. Great to be involved in that move to the new stadium and that whole promotion to the Premier League and staying in there. Great set of fans and a big club, so big following. And great fans.
You spell at Derby, the final stages of that season, when you hit a really, really good spell of goal scoring form in the Premier League, you helped the Rams into the FA Cup quarter-finals with a goal against Coventry. You get a last-minute winner at home to Chelsea, and setting Derby on their way to a famous victory at Old Trafford with the opening goal. A Derby mate of mine actually said to me ahead of this chat that the number of points that your goals won them that season was just incredible. I mean, was that something you prided yourself on as well, that you scored a lot of goals in your career, but you scored a lot of important kind of points winning goals as well?
Yeah, I think you do. I was aware of that. Yeah. And it's great when you win 1-0 or you score in the last minute, and you realise that these moments are the reason why we're getting these points on the board and climbing up the table. So it's nice to make an impact and do your bit for the club, isn't it? I think when I went to Barnsley as well, it was a similar situation. I know my dad used to always win on his coupon with the first or last goal. So. Yeah, but it's good to know or feel that you've contributed towards the club.
The goal at Old Trafford, fair to say that game is remembered for a different goal. Your teammate Paulo Wanchope's famous goal, perhaps not quite as graceful as Maradona's against England in '86, but it's reminiscent. He basically just goes like a knife through butter through the entire Man United team. The one thing I did notice on that, you're on his left side all that way. So how many times are you shouting pass, pass, pass when you're effectively in a better position? Or do you claim the indirect assist for just creating the space that he went on to run into?
I think it was all about the movement off the ball, really, wasn't it? From the taking players away and making them think he's going to pass it. No, I mean, it was just, I kept thinking he's going to pass it now. And I honestly think United defenders were thinking the same. Ironically, him and another player, two lads from Costa Rica, came the week before, played in training. I don't think he had any boots or anything. He got him boots, and he played in training that week, and there was almost a riot, the team, the lads are like when they get together. Jim Smith said, Paulo's playing up front, we're like, the guy's just come from Costa Rica, barely played any level of football whatsoever. We were supposed to go to Old Trafford with effectively like a trialist, and they were like, the lads were going crazy, really. And of course, he goes and scores one of the best goals, everybody's still talking about it now. It's just incredible. Like I say, a knife through butter. And, yeah, that was the way to settle yourself in.
Yeah, what a goal! And I mean, what is going through your head at that time? Because are you thinking? I mean, I don't think I'd made the connection actually that he'd so recently joined the club as well. So this is your new teammate. Is it unforgivable that a teammate isn't going to pass you until they put the ball in the back of the net and then all's forgiven?
Yeah, you're about to be annoyed, aren't you? You're about to dish out a bit of a bollocking, and then bang, it's in the back of the net, and you're like, "Well, that was good." God, you didn't give it me. Yeah, I mean, he kind of had that crazy unpredictability where I don't think at times he knew what he was doing, but he obviously did, but he kind of like, it just happened naturally. He didn't think about it, he'd just dribble and he'd half overrun the ball to the defender. He'd think they can nick it, but he had these very sort of long, nimble legs that could just tap it past them. And he was a real handful, big guy, quick. So yeah, he turned out to have a great career, didn't he? And I think we could all see that from his first introduction.
Yeah, amazing. So you leave Derby with 8 more Premier League goals added to your tally in 33 appearances to join newly promoted Barnsley. They've struggled for goals in the opening weeks of the 97-98 season, and the signing of you and eventually Jan Åge Fjørtoft helps them put a really decent fist in to staying up. Ultimately, relegation does beckon, but a quick stat, they win 10 Premier League games in total, which is quite a lot for a relegated team, 2 of which are before you join. You score in 7 of the other 8 wins, including the only goal of the game at Anfield against your old side Derby and Villa Park. So how close were that Barnsley side to staying up? What was maybe missing that maybe just would have given you that edge? You just needed those extra couple of results, I think, that season.
I think without a doubt, I mean, we touched on it before with Norwich, but I think even more so with this particular squad, it was just strength in depth. We made a really good fist of it after Christmas. We sort of had a really good run. The Villa game, we won away from home. They were a good side at the time. I was ill for a couple of games. I had meningitis at one stage, and I had a couple of weird illnesses that were just popped up from nowhere. And I missed the Liverpool game, but we ended up down to 8 men. Almost drew with Liverpool with 8 men, believe it or not. Yeah. I think they scored in the last sort of minute, and then the referee, I forget his name now, but the referee, I'm probably the only guy from that era who doesn't know his name because I didn't play in the game, but he's like the most famous or infamous man in Barnsley. I mean, people still know his name now. I don't think he's welcome in those parts, but by all accounts, it was pretty tough on Barnsley. It was some poor decisions, and I think the one with Chris Morgan getting sent off. But basically, to end up with, it wasn't just the game we lost; it was the 3 suspensions then, and we just had too small a squad. We were 2 or 3 players, squad players, not 2 or 3 world beaters to try and drag us up. But I think we could have. I thought we were very, very close to staying up, and it was such a shame because it would have been an epic achievement for a club that size,
Yeah, 100%. And I have actually spoken to your former manager, Danny Wilson, on an early episode. He remembers that quite well. Both he and Roy Evans couldn't quite believe the performance of Gary Willard that day. So Gary Willard.
Oh, yeah, there he is.
I hope that doesn't bring back too many terrible memories.
Yeah. Gosh, yeah. You know what? I've never even seen it. That's the thing, because like I said, I was ill with this weird illness in hospital. I never even saw the game at all, so I don't. I've just heard the folklore, if you like. But yeah, I'm sure Danny remembers it very well. Yeah,
it's quite a watch on YouTube if you get a chance.
I'll be watching that over the next couple of days.
So obviously on the drop back down to Division 1, you score 15 goals in 23 with Barnsley. Blackburn come knocking with a £4.5 million fee. How tempted were you to stay at Oakwell? You were player of the year there, or was it again the chance to just take that step back up, and a club as big as Blackburn just too tempting to turn down?
It was just too tempting to turn down. I think perhaps if I'd have been a young lad, or with plenty of time left, I could have stayed longer. And in many ways, you kind of, I wish I had done, because I enjoyed it there so much. I mean, I enjoyed my time there probably more than anywhere else in my career. It was just a great team to play for. The fans were fantastic to me, and it was like, especially in the Premier League, it was us against the world. And we were treated like gods by the supporters, and and a great place to play your football, because even if we were losing, they were like, well, they're giving us 100%, so they got behind us. And I was disappointed really for the supporters that I did leave, but at 27 at the time, I just thought, can I afford to take another year out of the Premier League. There's no guarantee you're going to get back. I think we'd started fairly averagely. I think we were sort of outside the playoffs, and you just start to wonder whether that opportunity is always going to be there. Blackburn had won the Premiership a couple of years before, Jack Walker era, at the time one of the biggest clubs in the country, and it was just to that choice. There was a number of clubs at the time close to meeting the fee or met the fee, but I think with Blackburn, with them being where they were, I lived in Manchester, and the history, the recent history they had, and the Jack Walker scenario and the wealth, it was just a kind of a no-brainer, really. So yeah, I was just a bit disappointed. I loved, in an ideal world, I'd love to played 2 or 3 years at Barnsley and then moved to Blackburn, but it just wasn't to be.
Yeah, and obviously, you were a hero at Barnsley. I mean, Newcastle, Everton, Wolves, these were some of the clubs that you were linked with in your career. Were any of those around that time that maybe looking at?
Maybe Newcastle, Leeds, quite a lot of the time during that period. Like, Dad had quite an okay season in the Premiership and started off scoring quite a lot of goals in the first division. So yeah, there was a number of clubs, and but Blackburn was, for me, there's the obvious choice.
So it is just 4 seasons on from Blackburn's title win, as you say. They're heading into a period of some trouble. They also appear to be like collecting strikers at this time. There's a lot of strikers. You're in there with Nathan Blake, Kevin Davis, Matt Jansen. There's Chris Sutton and Kevin Gallagher still on the books. Obviously, the competition for places must have been unlike any other club you'd had. And Brian Kidd had signed you. I mean, I imagine that was the best squad depth that you'd ever played in your career. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, it was just. I mean, it was almost counterproductive. It was like so many players there. The old saying, "Oh, they can't go too good to go down." But what's to say, it was a no-brainer. And some of the other clubs that came infamy at the time were, in the top maybe 6 of the Premiership. And I thought it was a no-brainer to sign for Blackburn, because in my own head, I think, well, they can't go down. Those players, it's just they've obviously had a bad start. Something's gone wrong. I don't know what it is, but they're not going to go down. You're a bit big-headed, you think, especially when I go, and there's no way we're going down. And then, it was just, the squad depth was immense, but there was kind of a turmoil from there was the players that were there who'd won the Premiership. So, the Premier League, they were like, you got the feeling that they're thinking, well, it can't be our fault. We won it once, so. Why are we at the bottom? It must be all the new guys, or So it was difficult, really, and. There was players who wanted to leave, and I think it was difficult for Brian Kidd to get that, to get a grip of that and turn it round. But it looked like we were going to do it. But again, when we went down, when you are a big fish in a small pond, sometimes it can work against you. And having won the Premier League so recently, to then drop into the first division, it then becomes a difficult place to play, because if you're 0-0 after 20 minutes at home to Stockport, the fans are grumbling and booing, and because of what we should be beating these 10-0. So yeah, it became quite difficult, really, and it was a shame, because again, it's a tremendous club, and the recent history there, and the players were in the dressing room. There was no way we should have gone down. That was pretty difficult to get up, but without a doubt, we should have stayed up.
Obviously, as you mentioned, Brian Kidd, I mean, he obviously came with a big reputation as an assistant to Alex Ferguson, and it was his first big role, I think, as a manager. He eventually lost his job. Graham Souness returned to English football with Blackburn, and known as being a little bit spiky as a reputation, kind of on the telly, in the dressing room. What was he like to play for?
Like I say, he's quite spiky, and he'd call a spade, but he was. I think he'd definitely calmed down from like the probably his playing days and his early managerial career at Liverpool or whatever, because he wasn't. I think we were all expecting the hairdryer treatment every game sort of thing, but I think he'd had a heart problem, hadn't he, and a heart bypass and stuff. I don't know whether he purposely was keeping a lid on his anger management, or. But he never, to be honest, in all the time I was there, I never really saw him flip, and I never saw the kind of Graham Souness I thought we were going to see. He was actually quite calm and measured, and he would have no problem telling somebody, whether he thought they played good or bad, or but it was all done in quite a calm way. I mean, I remember one game not long after he took over, he just went around the whole dressing room after the game saying, "Poor, terrible, okay, plus marks." terrible. So he just told you exactly what it was, but he wasn't. He wasn't screaming and bawling and fighting anybody.
There was no flag planting in the centre circles of his Galatasaray days at Ewood Park. You do get a move back to the Premier League with Bradford City, who were looking to strengthen after surviving their first season back in the top flight against the odds. It is a tough season. It does end in relegation. There aren't many team highlights that season, but a personal one for you must have been both goals in a 2-0 win against Derby. The following season, you score 4 goals in 2 league games against Barnsley. Where do you stand against celebrating goals against your former clubs?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's difficult, isn't it? Especially when you've got an affinity for the fans, which I did with both those clubs. It's awkward, but I think sometimes when you score, it's kind of you've already celebrated before you've thought. But I certainly wouldn't be going over the top and really enjoying it. I think it's you've got a job to do, and you've got to do the job for your new employees, and at times that upsets the old employees. Bite the hand that feeds you, but once fed you. I'm not a big fan of people who sort of gloat in it, but I think a little small celebration is okay.
Not the full Adebayor down the pitch and knee slide dance.
No. That's only when you've had a bad time somewhere, isn't it? And, stick from the home fans. Yeah. I've not been in that situation.
And during that time at Bradford, I mean, Stan Collymore was one of the players that joined, obviously one of the early stars of the Premier League. I mean, did you ever strike up? There wasn't much chance to play with him. Did you ever strike up understanding on the field? And, what was that like? What was he like?
I actually didn't play. I mean, it's great, good cracking training and everything. We had great banter in that dressing room, but we were a bit like the sort of Harlem Globetrotters or something. We just had all these old mega names, but we had nowhere to train. It was just a complete bizarre scenario. We were trained. I mean, literally, amateur teams, pub teams would have better training facilities than we had in that period. And a lot of the time, we'd go to a training ground and it'd be flooded, and they literally couldn't get on there at all, like underwater. And then for the rest of the time, it was just like ankle deep mud, like we used to play when you were a kid, and your boots build up mud around them, so they're like a dinner plate, And we had players like Benny Carboni, Stan Collymore, Lee Sharp, Peter Beagrie, Dean Saunders. We just were like a Dan Prochescu. We're like a who's who of them in footballers, but with like nowhere to train. So and Stan came. I was doing okay actually, and then Stan came and they left me out, and I was like, I remember being fuming with the manager, and after that, I played most of the games, but Stan didn't seem to play. I don't know. I think it was either him or me at times, it's like a big striker or whatever. So we didn't really play together. Every now and again we'd come on as sub, or we'd end up together on the pitch. But yeah, I didn't really strike up a relationship with him, to be honest, on the pitch, because never got the chance.
That was your final season in the Premier League. The Premier League is changing at a pace during these sort of 6-7 seasons across when you're playing in it. What were the main noticeable differences from kind of that final season with Bradford and that first breakthrough season, if you like, with Norwich?
I think year on year it's got stronger, hasn't it? Really, there's more and more money crept in year on year, and to the point now where you fast forward it 20 odd years, and there's no easy games. There's no poor teams. The small clubs can go and buy players for 20 million or 25 million, or and I think that it did sort of get stronger towards the end of my spell. But it was always the place to play football, like it is now. To me, it's always been the best league in the world, the most competitive, the best atmospheres, and some of those games, Anfield and Old Trafford are just fabulous.
Absolutely. And your time at Bradford, I mean, you mentioned like the Harlem Globetrotters, obviously it does end in relegation. Bradford go into administration, and unfortunately you're one of the players that falls by the wayside and has to be released. I mean, how do you find out about something like that? Do you go to training one day and everything's changed? What is the process of finding out you've been released like in that way?
I think, it's going back a long time now. If the chairman at the time was collecting all these players, and the Bosman ruling had just come in, and I think he thought, well, I'm getting all these players who are probably worth £3-4 million. I'm getting them for nothing, so I'll pay them all these huge wages. We had a colossal wage bill. Benny Carboni, we had the newspaper out one day in training, and it had the world's best paid footballers. I think Alan Boksic was number one at AC Milan or something at the time, and Benny was number two at Bradford. And he reportedly on like 40, 42, 45,000 a week. This is a time when, the great United, Beckham, Keane are on 20s, And I think the chairman thought at the time, well, we're going to get these players for nothing and they've got a value. But in actual fact, the Bosman ruling collapsed the transfer market, and very few players at the time, only the top sort of 1 or 2% of the players who became available actually carried a transfer fee, and everybody else became free agents. So we ended up with a club full of highly paid players that they couldn't afford. ITV Digital, after the relegation, ITV Digital pumped a lot of money in, and they went by the wayside, and that money fell through as well. So there was just no way to pay all these players. So in the end, the chairman was kind of coming to different players and to release them. They'd come to you with an offer that was like, play for a different club, and they'd pay half your wages or whatever, just to play for a different club. I think that's what happened when Benny went to Middlesbrough, and those kind of deals were flocking about. So it was a difficult period, obviously for the club. There's no way they could sustain the level of wages. And when I left and went to Sheffield United on a free transfer, which was good place to end a career, really, working for Neil Warnock.
Yes, yeah, a big character of the game. I mean, what was Neil like? I mean, he's again just a massive character of the game.
Yeah, I mean, a huge character. I don't think I realised how much until I went there. Really, I enjoyed it. Again, by this time, throughout my career, I had injuries. Started off the conversation about injuries as a young player, but throughout my career, I was always hampered by sort of semi-serious injuries. And I'd always sort of just get a good momentum going and get injured, and get good momentum going and get injured. And by the time I went to Sheffield United, that's what was happening there. I was constantly injured every few games, just out of pure frustration, because I loved football all my life. But during that spell there, I was that frustrated with being injured that I was kind of ready to retire, if you like, just in pure frustration of the injuries. But I wish I could have contributed more during that period and been fit and able to play, because I think I would have really, really enjoyed playing for Neil. But great to be around, and a real character, and they all screaming at the referees, and it was just never a dull moment. He really knew his stuff, though. Obviously, you could tell that. If I was a manager if I was an owner of a club that needs to get promotion or keeping the Premiership, I think he'd do a lot worse than Neil. He really knows how to manage, and I think his biggest sort of asset for me was you could put him in a room full of the biggest names in the world, but he would naturally feel like the boss.
Yeah,
he would have no inferiority complex whatsoever. He would walk in there and everyone would know who the boss was. And I think that's a big asset to have in football management, because so many great coaches out there don't turn into great managers because they haven't got that.
So, as you mentioned, you finished your career at Sheffield United. You retire in 2005. Instead of going down the management path, you start your own businesses alongside your wife, Dawn. Was that always the plan, to leave the game behind? And tell us a bit more about what you're doing now.
Yeah, I mean, it was the plan at the time. These injuries towards the end of the career in particular, it kind of like, it did taint me a little bit. And I was so frustrated not being able to play to the best of your ability and going out there, 50%, 60% fit all the time. I was ready for a change, and we built some houses in Cheshire where we live. Wayne Rooney bought one of them. At the time, I said, "Oh, you've used your connections and you've built a house for Wayne Rooney." But in actual fact, we were building a house; it was nearly finished, and he came along and bought it. And we got into building some sort of luxury properties, and now we're predominantly doing interior architecture, interior design. We're out in Dubai doing the same thing. Just opened an office here, and there's plenty of work out in Dubai for interiors, and a lot of iconic, lovely buildings, but a bit shabby inside. So it's ideal for us, a great marketplace for us. So hopefully things will take off here, and we'll be here a long time.
Doesn't sound like a return to football's likely in the near future. Do you keep in touch with many of your old teammates? Is it anyone in particular? Who would we find in your phone book?
Do you know what? I've had the same phone since phones came out. Since I was about 20 when I got my first phone. I think I've had the same phone number. So you probably find every player I've ever played with, but I don't really speak to any of them. The only player I now and again keep in touch with is Nathan Blake.
Right.
A guy, Sean Smith from Crewe. But other than that, I could meet anybody I played with tomorrow in a bar in Dubai who I've not seen for 20 years, and I could spend all night with them chatting away and pick up where we left off, sort of thing. But I think it's a bit maybe it's a bit indicative of me, but also I think at football is you thick as thieves, you travel together, you stay in hotels together, you live together almost, and then you move on and you just move on,
Yeah, nature of the job. Yeah.
Yeah. It'd be good to see some of them at times, but yeah, only Nathan and Sean really would I speak to on a semi-regular basis. Yeah.
And I believe you've got a famous footballing son-in-law as well. Do you and Riyadh have a chat shop over the match at kind of family get-togethers, or is kind of football off the conversation list?
Oh no, all the time. Yeah. I love talking football. Right? He's a guy who really loves his football as well. I mean, he literally would play on the street. He blooming does when he's not. He will kick a ball around straight after training. Train all day and then just loves his football. So yeah, I love talking about football with. It's give me a new lease of life actually. And I'm a City fan as a childhood City fan. I was at the Ricardo Villa Cup final, about 81 or something. Would it be something like that? 81. Always been a City fan, and now it's just a real treat to go and watch Riyadh and a team like that.
Wow.
Over the last few years, I would say over the last 4 or 5 years as a whole, definitely the best team in the world in terms of style of football, and to go and watch it's just brilliant. And then to have Riyadh part of it and hear a few inside stories is great for me. Yeah.
I mean, if there's ever a way to get in with your father-in-law, it's become one of the best players at the title-winning side he supports. That's incredible work from Riyad Mahrez.
We do every now and again watch the on YouTube. I don't know if you've ever seen it. There's like a split. There's like a split screen from the documentary that Neil Warnock made, and with Pep. He loves that.
Yeah, incredible that you can swap stories about Neil Warnock and Pep Guardiola over the dinner table. It's amazing.
Fantastic.
Another bit of your post-football career, you became a reality TV star with the Real Housewives of Cheshire. I've read that you've talked about this in an interview to say you maybe wouldn't have done it in your footballing days because of the amount of stick you might have got in the dressing room, but it's been fine post-football. Which former teammate might have given you the most stick about your reality TV career?
Oh God! I mean, all of them. To be honest, it was an absolute no-go. But Nathan Blake, Sutty at Blackburn, Darren Sheridan at Barnsley, Nick Kozluk at Sheffield United, Jack Lester at Sheffield United. They're just names that immediately jump out. But I mean, literally to a man, it would have been painful. I just wouldn't have done it. No chance.
I can't think of anyone less likely to do it than Chris Sutton. That's fair.
Well, then again, he always never said he'd never be a pundit. Really, but might see him in an up and coming episode.
Well, Ashley, with 33 Premier League goals and 137 appearances, a career total of 131 goals in just over 400 games across a 60-year career as a pro, you're a footballing hero to thousands of fans who've cheered your name over the years. We've perhaps covered a few of them already. What do you consider to be your career highlights in football?
Well, just going through the career, they scoring the winner to take Crewe up to the next division was, I can still remember that was fantastic. And then in general, just you grow up as a kid, you want to be a footballer and you want to score goals at Old Trafford and Anfield, which I've done a couple of times, and just scoring at those grounds are the real highlights. Just to go into those iconic stadiums and ultimately settle the game, which is fantastic, and you'll never forget.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time, Ashley. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having us on. I really appreciate it.
So that was Ashley Wood. What a lovely man. He took the time to email me after the show to say how much he'd enjoyed it and if there was anything he could do to help and wish me luck. What a top bloke. And, some of those goals that we relived, I know that there will be Derby fans and Barnsley fans in particular who just remember some of the crucial goals, crucial points winning goals that he scored for them. But he scored goals everywhere he went and was a really popular player, I think, with most of the fan bases he played with, which is, quite impressive in and of itself. But what a great guy. Riyad Mahrez pops around for family get-togethers now. What a life. And now there's just enough time to reveal who the best Australian of the Premier League era is, according to your votes on Twitter. It was tight, and Tim Cahill was winning for most of the vote until, at the last, a late surge for Mark Viduka with 46% of the votes is your Premier League greatest Australian. He beat Tim Cahill's 36%, Harry Kewell got 11%, Mark Schwarzer got just the 7%. Mark Viduka goes into our Premier League of Nations Hall of Fame to represent Australia. On next week's show, we return to our all-time Premier League table countdown. We're up to 48th position, and that is Blackpool. What a season they had in the Premier League. It was just one solitary season. There were lots of goals, crazy drama going on off the pitch as well. We cover all of that. We dig right back to Stanley Matthews and Stan Mortensen, all the way through to Holloway and Charlie Adam, and cover lots more in between with Chris Smith and author of the fantastic book How Not to Run a Football Club, Nathan Fogg. They have got the inside track on Blackpool Football Club, and it is juicy. In the meantime, if you've enjoyed the show, please hit subscribe. Please share it with a friend. Please leave a review, especially on Apple Podcasts. That really, really helps, lifts me up the charts and helps me find new people. And keep sharing the podcast. We keep finding new listeners week in, week out. I really appreciate it. And if there's anything you want to input into the show, please get in touch. I'm on all the social medias. Just search for When Football Began Again, or email whenfootballbeganagain@gmail.com. I look forward to receiving those in the weeks ahead. For now, though, until next week with Chris and Nathan, thank you for listening. Meet you back here this time next week. Thanks for listening to When Football Began Again. Join us again next time for another slice of Premier League nostalgia. In the meantime, subscribe, leave us a 5-star review, find us on socials, and spread the word with all your Premier League loving mates.